All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Marshall Clubeau. I'm the project director of Michigan Solar Communities with Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. Happy to have you here this evening for Solarize Lansing, uh, hosted by GLREA, the City of Lansing, Absolute Solar, Michigan Saves, Lansing Board of Water and Light, all partners on this great event. We have other townships in the area, Meridian Township, City of East Lansing, Williamston Township, and of course the pioneer of Solarize, Ann Arbor, who has recently gone over 5 megawatts of action through their Solarize program. So, as we look to expand Solarize here in Lansing and the Lansing region, really want to look to Ann Arbor as a model of success and encouragement. And, we have a little bit of work to catch up, but that's why we're here doing the work. So, thank you, everybody, and feel free to reach out after the meeting with any questions. That's marshall@glrea.org. Next slide, please. So this first slide here is going to be presented by Pat O'Boyle of Michigan Saves. Thanks, Pat.
Hello, everybody. My name is Pat Boyle. I'm Director of Business Development with Michigan Saves, also a GLREA board member. I'll give a quick, this is just a one slider, but I'll give a quick rundown on what Michigan Saves actually is. It's a nonprofit green bank. And essentially what that is we do financing for energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements around the state of Michigan. We only operate within the state of Michigan. We've done about $640 million in loans to date, mainly a residential program. We work well with like VWL, Braden. We got to meet him last week. Consumers Energy, DTE. He's like VWL has a great resource in Braden. He's been really good to work with. I'm excited that we made the connection. But essentially, this is how you pay for the solar if you don't fund it with cash or some other finance solution. Most other finance solutions have some odd fees that are baked in. We do charge the contractor they 2.49%. Most companies like Absolute find a way to work that into their deals. That's a very low fee. Some of the finance solutions that are no longer operating in the state of Michigan were like a 20% dealer fee, which gets passed along directly to the consumer. But this is an unsecured personal loan up to 15 years. The interest rates start at 7.49%. We do go up to $100,000, which helps with solar and battery storage projects. But again, we also do furnaces, heat pumps, insulation, windows. So it's more than just solar. Absolute has been a good partner of ours from the get-go. When they actually started, they were a contractor that signed on with us early on. But essentially, it's just a tool that our contractors have access to. We do vet the contractors, make sure they have proper licensing and insurance within the state of Michigan. And then obviously, we have their next paycheck. So if there are issues, it's good to follow up with us. There's also a really good whitehouse.gov just put out a questions to ask your solar contractors, and companies like Absolute or other solar companies in our network will have the answers for those questions, where many of the solar contractors that are out there will either not have those answers or will not have the correct answers for properly deciding on whether to do solar at your home. So, and I have to actually, I threw my contact info right in the chat. I'm at another event sitting in a car waiting to go back inside. So I am going to have to bounce off. I can stay around for a minute or two if anybody has a direct question that I can answer real quick, but otherwise I'll let Fred and Marshall and Braden take it from there.
All right, thank you, Pat. Appreciate your work. Michigan Saves first green bank. All right, so furthermore, today's agenda, we're going to be hearing from Lori Welch, Lansing Sustainability Manager, about some of the work that they're doing at the city. We have our solar story this evening, as well as some specifics coming from Absolute Solar, who's our contractor for this evening. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A at the end that any of the team can answer. So thanks everyone for being here. And again, Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association is proud and happy to be launching this Solarize Lansing. We have these events happening across the state. We're a 30-plus year nonprofit, really operating to expand renewable energy solutions to farmers, residents, commercial, you name it. Really excited to get kicking off. So kick it over to Lori. Thanks, Lori.
Thanks, Marshall. And welcome, everybody. So glad you could be here to learn about this all of the great information from the speakers that we have today, to everything from financing solar to some of the local incentives and rebates. You can forward to the next slide, please. Thank you. I just want to talk just very briefly about the city's mission to mitigate the impacts of climate change and make our city more resilient and sustainable. So the guiding document for us to do that is our Sustainability Action Plan. You can find it on the website here at the bottom of the slide if you haven't already looked at it. But the big kind of overarching climate goal that we have in this city is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 59% by 2030, with full carbon neutrality by 2050. It's a very ambitious goal. We know by looking at where greenhouse gas emissions are coming from that really the two biggest sectors are transportation and building energy use. So this fits right into how we're going to mitigate those impacts. But the plan also prioritizes other strategies, such as how we manage our materials in the waste stream, how we're going to protect and conserve our water resources, transportation and mobility, sustainable land use, and of course, energy. Energy efficiency is a huge component of this work, but the next step obviously is then to make sure we power our buildings with renewable clean energy. So that's where this fits right into that strategy and those goals. So if you haven't already looked at the plan, please consider taking a look at it. It really encompasses a huge amount of goals and objectives related to how we can work together to make Lansing more sustainable. I'll leave you with that because I want to spend most of the time hearing from our other presenters today. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Marshall.
All right. Thank you so much, Lori, and all the great work that you do at the city. Lansing's really looked upon as a leader. So, that's thanks to a lot of your hard work. So it's appreciated. So presenting your solar story tonight is Mike Zorkian. Hope I got that all right. That's first time try there. So thank you, Mike, for being here and looking forward to hearing about your story.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks, Marshall. So hi, everybody. I am Mike Zarukian. I'm a resident of Okemos today, but before that, Lansing, and before that, East Lansing. So I've lived around the community since 1976 or so. So I've had and raised my family here. I am a physician, and I say that because I have a passion in my retirement for climate sustainability, its relationship to health, and to help reduce, among other things, the healthcare footprint in terms of carbon. So what a lot of people don't know is the healthcare sector is now about 10% of all the carbon emissions in the United States, and that's not insignificant. And since we address the health impacts of climate change, it's only right for us also to try to make the healthcare sector carbon neutral. But more on that later if you have questions. I'm going to talk about our solar journey here out in Okemos. We're right off Grand River across from St. Martha's Church. We went to solar for all the reasons you've probably already heard, but I like the picture of the Drury family. It's part of what I stare at as I think about it. My children, my grandchildren, their grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. We need a sustainable climate and an environment worth living in. And so for us, reducing our carbon footprint was first and foremost to try to address global warming and climate change. But we also had another compelling use. Part of our early journey on that was to move from a gas furnace to a geothermal electric one. What we discovered in that process were our electric costs were significant and now became the dominant factor in our overall consumer's energy bill. So we wanted to look for a way to lower our electric costs with that as a dominant one. But we also lived through the ice storm of 2013 or 14 around Christmas, whatever that was, and spent 4 days in a polar vortex after that with no power. And so we went all in on a number of things you'll hear me talk about. But we did want less reliance on the grid, including power outage resilience, which is why you'll see some of our other factors built in. We, of course, were interested in the 30% federal tax credit, which is great. And there have been some additional either credits or deductions that have come around renewable energy sources. If you look at the upper right, I just wanted to sort of advertise our savings so far, if you will, in terms of what this means to people. So for example, 30 tons of CO2 reduction is what our system has generated in the time we've had it, which is December 2022. So in about a year and a half, we've made a significant impact on CO2 and sulfur dioxide. And so we're happy with that change, but we'll also talk about other aspects. So we started our journey actually in 2021 and experienced what too many people have experienced, which is an out-of-state company that promised to help and got about halfway through and then ghosted us, and which we had to therefore do what it took to get our money back. We did, but that helped convince us that we needed a local company that we found trustworthy. It's also where I learned about the Solarize Meridian project, which is where I got some important help. And you'll hear more about how I did that. But we ended up going with solar panels on the roof, which you saw, battery storage in the basement, which you'll see in a second, an EV charger for the EV that we knew we'd be getting, in fact, just did recently, a month or so ago, and then a link to our natural gas generator, which is our emergency backup in case all else fails. And so that's our system, along with some other enhancements you'll see in a bit. And around that time, we learned about the discount program. So we were one of the early folks, I think, in that discount program, and you're going to hear more about that today. Next slide. So in the process, just so you know, we actually, at the time, there were 6 participating solar companies for Solarize Meridian. So I got a quote from all of them. I interviewed all of them, including their leadership and oftentimes their CEOs, and tried to make sure I had a organization that I felt was going to be stable, that had the right kind of leadership. And although I think all of them were good, some were great, Absolute Solar stood out to me as the best. And so that's the one that we went with. I have nothing to claim. So my disclaimer, I'm not, I have no conflicts of interest here. I'm just a customer like you would be if you joined this. In May of 2022, we got our initial design and proposal. We did have a bit of a complicated system, but we also had a complicated kind of odyssey with Consumers Energy. But by the time we got that done, we could then move forward pretty rapidly with getting our implementation done, which went live in December of 2022, the worst possible time to have solar go live if you want to be impressed, but you'll see how that rapidly improves. So the picture you see here is the checklist of all the things you have to go through to get it right. And mercifully, Absolute Solar works with Consumers Energy or DTE or whomever to do this, but you can see it's fairly complicated and they do all this work on your behalf. So that I think was great. Next slide. So what does our system look like today? So that aerial view is the way our house faces. So north is due north as you from there. So our house actually faces east southeast, which is not exactly an ideal place to have solar, but the beauty for us at least is that that part of our yard stays full sun from basically sunrise to about 2 p.m. and then it slowly fades. But it's part of why our placement was in that location and why, at least probably for us, we needed some more panels than people who have a good south or west facing roof, or obviously have ground mounting that you can do. So in any event, what we have in the basement are lithium iron phosphate batteries. And it's a stack of batteries, so we can actually add more to our stack. But right now we have 4 such batteries. I'll show you a picture of them, and we can store about 20 kilowatts of power in that for use when the sun is not shining. And that, of course, is the entire purpose of batteries, is to be able to extend the benefit you get from solar into the nighttime and to have some backup if you need it when the sun is not up. We have a typical level 2 EV charger. That's the higher powered chargers for residential use. One step below the superchargers that you might see out at grocery stores, et cetera, Meijer, et cetera. And that was added at the same time. That was also part of the discount that we could get, the 30% federal tax credit. and part of the discount program allows you to add this in while you're doing it and getting your discount for your solar. We added an EV just a couple of months ago, and we've already had significant savings in our gasoline as a result of that. So I may be able to share a little of those data in a bit. We have what I call a smart connection to our whole house generator. What we mean by that is typically if you have a whole house generator and you lose power, everything goes dark. And then maybe 10 or 15 seconds later, your whole house generator kicks in and powers things up again. Ours is designed in a way that I didn't know the last time we had a storm a couple of weeks ago. We lost a tree, but we didn't lose power even for a second. And I was so busy doing what I was doing, I didn't even notice the slight blip in the lighting that my wife noticed, saying, "Yep, we're without power." And I looked at her and said, "Are we?" And the answer was yes, we are, but we don't experience that. So our logic system for us is if the power does go out like it did in the storm, we first rely on solar if it's available. If there's no solar available, we turn to or not enough, we turn to our battery backup to pull additional power. And then if that runs down or out, then we turn to the generator. I think we were out about 8 hours on the storm a couple of weeks ago. We never made it to the point where we needed to use the generator, even though I think the power came on at midnight. So it's a very reliable system, and one of the options that you have if you're looking to install not only solar, but some other equipment as well. This year, we also replaced our gas water heater, which of course has a significant carbon footprint, for a much more efficient heat pump water heater, electric, that runs off solar too. So we have considerable savings that accrues from that. And if you're not familiar with them, it's interesting to know that they dehumidify the space they're in and help cool it. So at least for us in the summer in our basement, we no longer need to use a dehumidifier, and it's nice and cool down there for storage. So with all of that, I'll just make the caveat that obviously this is a conversation about solar. We had a more expensive system because we went all in on all sorts of different technologies. And so it'll take us a little longer to achieve our return on investment, but I'm actually surprised that we're starting to catch up with all the things that we did. So there's this additional benefit if you can do some of the heat pump water heater things and the like. So here's our system. The solar panels you can see on the roof, a backup generator on the side of the house hidden in the forest, our EV charger in the garage, our heat pump water heater in the basement, and then the brains of the whole system, which is the inverter that makes DC AC, and then the battery stack that's next to that stores energy for when the sun doesn't shine. Next slide. So this is what our monitoring looks like. So we have either on the web or on an app on our phone, we can watch to see what's happening. And so what I wanted to show you on the left is this is a typical morning for us. So our solar panel at this point has got about 10,000 of its 15,000 watt capacity at about 9 in the morning. I think it was at the time we did this. It had recharged the battery to 75% at that time. The grid was, Consumers Energy was only providing us with the equivalent of a light bulb's worth of energy, which is basically just to keep the flow open, but 56 watts. And the house at that time wasn't using much, 400 watts or so at the time. By late morning, you can see the battery is full. The green batteries you can see are full. It's now pumping out closer to the 15,000 watt capacity that it has. And there's lots of energy going back to the grid, for which we get a credit that Fred will probably talk about more, momentarily. The other thing I wanted to do is show you what happens with an EV charger. So let me show you this diagram at the beginning and walk you through it. I don't know if you can see my mouse, hopefully, but can you guys see my mouse? Because I can point things out if you can see it. Okay, perfect. So the greenish blue line that you see going left to right is actually the charge that's on our battery. So it trickles down overnight when there's no sunshine. When the sun comes up, it goes up and it's fully recharged, and then it comes down again the next night. It never in the summertime, it absolutely never gets low enough that you have to revert to Consumers Energy, which you can tell because the yellow line, if the yellow line is above the 0 mark, you're taking energy from the grid. You can see in that 24-hour periods, which I think was just last week, we got no energy from the grid, even though we plugged in our EV to charge it around noontime on that day. So you can see it takes a lot of energy to charge a car. But on a sunny day, all it really did was stop sending credits to the grid, which are less valuable anyway. And it didn't do anything significantly in terms of even discharging our battery, let alone getting close to where we would have to use grid power. So I thought it might be interesting for you to see that. The other little things are just evidence of things that we're using during the day, coffee pots and things like that. Next slide. This is a little bit about how the energy we generate and how it's distributed. So a couple things I'll define. There's the load on a house. In other words, how much electricity does the home need for whatever is happening? And this is for 2022, 2023, and 2024. So obviously 2024 is partial, but I think if you look at it, you'll kind of get a sense. The system went live in December, so you're only seeing a small amount for December of 2022. But the system went fully live without the battery in early 2023. The battery went live in June of 2023. And the battery, just so you can tell, is the charge here. This is power charging to the battery, and this is discharge from the battery that might otherwise have to come from another source, such as consumers, etc. The green is the amount of power we got from the solar system. So you can see it's large. The amount we exported to consumers' energy to get a credit and use later was also significant. The amount that we had to quote unquote import, that's essentially how much electricity did we get from the grid over the entire course of the year, is less than we exported to consumers. So that's worth noting. And then in 2024, it looks more or less like the same thing, except we're probably going to end up with more solar, more battery than we had before. Everything else looks like it'll be roughly the same, except where you can see with the change that we have with the heat pump water heater, you can see we are definitely drawing less power from consumers' energy with that and the other things we have. Next slide. So this is from consumers' power, the energy use in 2022 through 2024. We've generated 30 megawatts during that time. So again, we're pretty happy with that. So in looking at it, you kind of have to go by color. So in 2022, remember, we did not even install the system until December. But this is what a year without solar might look like in terms of the demand from consumers. If you go to 2023, this is what it starts to look like. Winter months, January, February, some of March, and then the rest of the year up until about December, when it starts to become very little sun in comparison to earlier in the year. But what you can start to see even in 2023 was that the total amount of energy use from consumers pretty much is limited to January, February, March, a little in April, then much less in May, and starts to pick up again in November. The reason I want to exaggerate that a little bit at this point is if you look at 2024, that's the year when we've had the battery, the solar, and everything else in place. And you can see that for us, we draw almost nothing from the grid, from consumers' energy, from May all the way through to at least October, and then it starts to pick up. And so I'll show you what some of the financial benefits of that have been for us. Next slide. All right, so just to try to close up, so here's an example of a piece of what your bill will look like once you have solar in place. There's this thing called self-generated outflow, which is how much energy are you producing? In other words, kilowatt hours. How much is consumers charging you for it? And then since these are negative numbers, essentially what's the value of that? What credit are you getting for it, or what that can be applied done to your bill? And then the typical electric charges that you'll see as part of the system. So just to kind of go really fast with what's been the main difference. So In 2022, of course, we didn't have much going on until December, so there's really no change in electric charges. But in the first year that we went live, between the amount of energy we took from consumers and the credits we got, we were able to save about $1,800. This year, to date, not even the end of the year, we are already at $3,500 less in our bill. So we're going to probably end up with about $5,000 less in our energy use, energy savings, compared to the year that we started, the year before we started solar. So it's weird because it's more than 100% decrease in your energy charges, but part of that's because you also can't see the credits we're racking up that are part of the process. So next slide. So, using our solar plant rather than fossil fuels to do multiple things gives you additional benefit, especially if you've got some extra that would otherwise go to the grid. You don't get as much financial benefit from sending things to the grid as you might get from getting rid of gas and therefore more carbon, and especially if it's efficient like this. So, but anyway, so that's a heat pump water heater next to another electric heater that we just use as a passive. Our heat pump water heater saves us between 15 and 30 a month. And it burns about a ton to a ton and a half less of carbon per year. The new electric vehicle that we purchased, the estimated gasoline savings on that, which are working out pretty much to be the case, are about $2,300 per year less for that as well. So that also sort of adds on top of the other benefits, and you can see the carbon footprint impact of that. So 6.5 fewer tons of carbon emitted. So when you put it all together, probably if I do the same thing next year, I'll try to mash all of this together to show the financial benefits. We thought as expensive as our comprehensive system was, it might take us 15 to 20 years to pay it back. I have a feeling now we're going to be less than 10, and just how much less we'll know in another year. So we think that's helpful. Next slide. Yep, I'm all set. All right, so thank you. We'll turn it over to Fred, and I'll be here for questions.
Thanks so much, Mike. Hi, my name is Fred Hingst, and I am the representative of Absolute Solar that's here. Thanks again to the city of Lansing, for GLREA, for Michigan Saves, Dr. Z for coming on out and donating his time, and all of you guys for showing on up here. I'm sure you're all living very busy lives, so 7 to 8 o'clock, an hour out during your week, greatly appreciated. Like the other folks that you've seen speak tonight here, I'm here from a climate change stance as my initial start. I'm technically a school teacher by trade, a high school biology teacher who was standing in front of his students talking about this for a long time, and then we'd get to the point where like, okay, then we got to do something, and then I would look around and I'm like, oh, this is the part where I need to do something. So we start with my panels on my roof right behind me there. We installed back in 2018, and was fortunate enough that my friends and family, my circle, sort of got on board with it and started to adopt. And the company that kept landing all the business, Absolute Solar, was like, well, Fred, you're already kind of working for us already. Let's just make it official. So here I sit in front of you now, like Dr. Z, trying to chase that carbon neutrality. We drive our electric vehicles. We just installed an air heat pump, so we have no more natural gas furnace in the home. So we're trying to model the thing that can happen here in mid-Michigan, and I think that's something that's really important that Absolute supports. Is we really are a local company. We've wrapped our arms around mid-Michigan. This is where we want to be, where our employees are from, and so we're super excited that you guys are here. So I'm going to walk you through the basics of what a Solarize group actually means. So the reasons, and Dr. Z touched on them perfectly there. When we're talking about that idea of energy independence, comes with adding solar to your roof, which will probably be a gateway drug to these other energy improvements along the way. You get the opportunity to decrease your carbon footprint, which is a big deal. Now, from a financial standpoint here, this is one of those weird home improvements that you can actually quantify with that ROI. My panels have already paid for themselves with my initial investment, and now every time I don't have to pay that a larger bill from the Lansing Board of Water and Light, I'm laughing all the way to the bank. On top of that, it's also a home improvement project that doesn't increase your property taxes. So you do this installation, we take care of all the paperwork, all of those things. We work with your local municipalities to make sure that that's all on the up and up. The taxes won't increase until you sell the home. It's actually the next homeowner that would see that realized value increase on your home. So it's got a lot of wonderful financial benefits beyond the environmental and the independence. So Pat O'Boyle spoke earlier about affordable financing. My wife's also a school teacher. So when we decided to do this, that we didn't have cash on hand, so we had to find a way to make that work within our budget. Using Michigan Saves is a wonderful way to go about doing that. What we were basically able to do was replace our electric bill with a loan payment and a small electric bill. Here we are all these years later, bought and paid for. So Michigan Saves is a wonderful organization. Can't recommend them highly enough. Speaking from personal experience working with them. So as far as the tax credit that was brought on up, currently and for the next 7 years, the federal government will help to offset the cost of these kind of projects, right? So not just solar, but also energy improvements to your home. So what that means is that, say, for instance, you bought a solar system that cost $10,000. You come tax time, if you have paid $3,000 in taxes, you can receive that credit back. When I did mine, I try to keep my taxes as close to even as possible. I don't want to pay in come that time, and I don't want to get a big check coming back. I received a check for $9,000 from the federal government that was for 30% of my system size. Now, if you are on a fixed income where you do not pay that much into taxes, you can still take advantage of this. It'll just be spaced out over multiple tax seasons for you to get that refund in place. And beyond just the system itself, it does take care of things like batteries and EV chargers. If you have to upgrade your service, any of these other things. And you can do it sort of in segments. If like, all right, we want to do this part first and then plan a couple of years from now, we can take advantage of that 30% again. It doesn't have to be all in one big chunk like it needed to be before. So what most of you will probably start with is what I have up on the screen here. So just sort of a brief idea of what's going on. This is an animation of a grid-tied system. So the panels will generate that DC electricity, that direct current, which will then need to come down into an inverter, either on the side of your house or behind each panel, depending on which type of system that you want. And it'll convert that electricity into alternating, the stuff that's hanging out in our wall sockets. When you are using it, you won't be sending anything on out when you're generating it. And if you're generating more than you're using, you'll send it back on out to the grid. Unless, of course, you're like Dr. Z, who is doing a fantastic job of making sure that his interaction with the grid is pretty minimal. And at Absolute, we can go from everywhere from the most basic system with panels and an inverter, obviously all the way up to what you saw during that solar story. So we can meet you wherever you are at in the process and tailor it to whatever kind of goals that you have specifically. So about that connecting with the grid, we actually have Lansing's local utility here in place to maybe put everybody's mind at ease and explain how that process goes. Braden, are you with us? And would you like to do a little talking?
Yes, sir. And thank you all for having me tonight. And thank you for everyone that decided to show up. This has been really cool to be a part of so far. And I'm just, happy to help some people get some solar installed if that's the route they want to go down. So my job, I'm the energy specialist working at the Board of Water and Light for the carbon neutrality team. It's my job to make sure that the residential interconnection process goes as smoothly as possible. There is some, bureaucratic paperwork that needs to get done. But fortunately, because of our relationship with Absolute Solar, we're able to get a lot of this done and reduce a lot of the hassle that people would experience when it comes to interconnection. So the stuff that we handle, Absolute Solar will submit applications on the residents' behalf. I'll get those approved. They help set up inspections with your local jurisdiction. For many of you, that's going to be the city of Lansing. And once that's done, they'll send that back to us and we'll get you set up with the correct meter so that you can backflow onto our grid, as well as upgrade your rate so you're able to capture those benefits from when you do sell power back to the board. Really, the only thing that we need from you in this entire, oh, if you want to go back just for 1 second. Yeah, the only thing we need from you guys at the very end is something called a parallel operating agreement. That'll come from me and my team. And what we do for that is just a simple agreement to say that you won't change the size of your system or alter it without first notifying the board. And then that locks in your benefits for an outflow perspective. You can go to the next slide now. Thank you. For the board itself, we offer two sort of incentives for people that do interconnect onto our grid. For any excess energy that you produce, we sell that back to you at a flat rate of about 50% of market rate from what we sell power at. And we do cap residential systems at 20 kW. The cool thing about the utility credit is it's now encoded that we can change this at will, meaning that in future updates to this rate, we're able to increase it and increase the benefit that our customers are receiving from their systems, especially as BWL's rates do continue to increase. Finally, we offer a up to $2,000 rebate for your guys' solar system, and that's based on the number of wattage that the system is. So, for example, if your system is 2 kilowatts, you'd get $1,000 back from the board as a check, and if it's up to 4 kW, you'd get $2,000 back. It's our way of helping to make sure that our customers are able to offset some of the costs of that initial sort of installation, and that helps to pair with things like the federal tax credit to really drive down the costs that people face. That's all for me. I'll be sticking around for the rest of the presentation. So if people have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And my contact information is in the chat right up at the top. If you have any questions or want to contact me further, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Braden. And I can speak from personal experience. I love the Board of Water and Light. That $2,000 came right back into the Hinks household. And I've had nothing but wonderful experiences in working with them. So it's a lovely relationship with them and Absolute Solar. So as part of this group buy, Absolute's been able to work with our distributing partners and track down some really fantastic materials. The first of which would be the type of panel that we're going to suggest. Now, we have others that are available, but this particular panel made by Meyer Burger is a 390 watt panel. And what makes this, from my standpoint, the most impressive panel on the market is its environmental impact. So beyond the fact that for 25 years, it's warranted structurally and to perform at a really high level. And by a high level, most solar panels on the market right now, every year are going to decrease their efficiency by 0.5%. And that's the ones I have on my roof. Meyer Burger came up with a new technology that has decreased that down to only 0.25% per year. So they're going to be working at a much higher rate, much longer into the process. But even more importantly to me is the environmental aspect. Part of that technological breakthrough was that they were able to remove one of the weak links in the whole process, which is solder inside of the panels, which is made of lead. And by doing so, they made this a 100% lead-free, PFAS-free panel. And it has the ability to be fully recycled at end of life whenever that comes. So they really were super mindful of cradle to grave when designing and building these panels. I will be very jealous of any of you that get them on the roof. Not that I'm sad that mine are up, but this is a fantastic, fantastic product. As far as the device that's going to turn that direct current into alternating current, we have a couple of options, which will be included in here. We have two kinds of inverters. We have inverters that hang out right behind the panels, and we'll be using N-phase as our inverter in that case. Solar Edge will be our other inverter that most of you will go after. That's what I have in my home. It is one large central inverter. Now, there's some advantages and disadvantages to each. There's some nuance to it, and that's a discussion that we'll have when we are out doing our site visits, either in person or virtually like this. The last component that I wanted to mention is how we secure these panels to either the ground or to your roof. We use an all-American company, Iron Ridge, which makes our racking systems right here in the USA with a wonderful 25-year warranty. One of the wonderful things about using them, we've been in business since 2016. We have our own warranties, of course, which myself or our other sales rep, Adam, will explain to you. We've never had to go back and fix a single leak in any roofs. That's a fantastic product, and our guys do a great job of installing it. So let's get to like the actual numbers on all this, and what does this mean for you? Right? So the way that the Solarize group works is that simply by being here or having signed up through the GLREA's website, Right off the bat, you're going to get 5% off of the cost of the system. So if we were just to come out to your house on a normal day and give you a quote, this is 5% off of that. Now, where this really starts to add on up is that if we get multiple people that decide to move forward with the process. So once we get to 6 people that decide to move forward, now the discount is 6%. 7 people, 7%. And it's additive all the way up to a 15% discount. We had the opportunity to work with Williamstown Township last year, and that group was able to capture a 14% discount off of all of their groups, or off of all of their buys, as 14 people decided to move forward. So like actual numbers, what does that look like here in Lansing? So we will just take a smaller system size here of 5 kilowatts. And really, if you want to compare apples to apples, and I'm sure Dr. Z can talk to you this, when I had mine installed, I had 5 installers on out as well. And really, the best way to figure out price is figure out this idea of price per watt, right? What's the total cost of the system divided by the size of the system? So the total cost of a 5 kilowatt system on average, because everybody's house is different, with the amount of wire that needs to be run, the pitch of the roof, the style of the roof. Is it a metal roof? Is it an asphalt roof? So there's some variation within that. But we'll go with on average $3.35 a watt. So if you take $3.35 times it by 5,000 watts or 5 kilowatts, you'll get the average price of that 16,750. Now, with our 5% discount right off the bat, you're already dropping the price down to below $16,000. If enough people decide to move forward and you can get up to that 15% discount, you drop that all the way down to 14,000 change, down well below $3 a watt, which is an unbelievable deal. I was so happy for those folks out in Williamston.
I really want to just, Fred, if you don't mind, I want to jump in just to, because we actually collect price data on this, and I can confirm in BWL service territory, what we normally see per watt is over $4 a watt. So this would be almost, half of the price that we oftentimes see within our service territory if people were to go through this.
Thanks so much for that, Brayden. Appreciate that. So this is all, of course, before we would talk about the possibility of your board of water and light, $2,000, which this system would qualify for, plus then the 30% off of that, which drops our price down even further and further and further. So you can see that between board of water and light, between the federal rebate and this Solarize program that's being sponsored by GLREA and the city of Lansing, that there is a really great way to make solar accessible to Lansing's residents. So the general flow is to this. We have our meeting here tonight, here on the 17th. And so what we're going to be asking for is that if you would like a free quote, right? If you would like us to come on out and either do an in-person site visit or do a virtual site visit, that you just request that within 1 week's time. So a week from today. And in order to do that, all you're going to do is tomorrow morning, I'll be sending out an email to everybody in attendance tonight and everybody that's signed up and will be receiving this video after the fact. And you'll just need to respond to that email like, yep, we're in. And you'll just need to do that with a copy of your bill, which I'll explain here in just a moment. So once we have everybody's intent laid on out, then it's on us to make sure that we can get the ball rolling here. And it takes about 2 weeks of a group of about this size for us to get on out and manage all those visits, have all those individual conversations, and then to get those proposals back into you so that you have an opportunity to look them over, ask questions, do all those things. So once we have those all on out 2 weeks later, then you get 2 weeks to sort of marinate and think about those things, get all your ducks in a row, make sure that things like homeowners associations are taken care of, things like that. And then we get to our finalized deadline, which for this group will be October 22nd. Now, we are not a high pressure sales organization. We're not going to show up with a contract that day. We're going to come back. We're going to make sure that all the information that we gather from our site visits goes through our permitting team, our own electricians, our install crews, so that they know everything, so that when you get a proposal back, you know that it's a legitimate proposal. But on the other end, we do have to be mindful of people that want to move forward with the project. So the group can't run sort of indefinitely. We have to have this deadline in place so that we can finalize our prices and those people can move forward with the project. So if anything comes on up in that meantime, in that short period where you need a little extension or something, that's something that we can work on individually. But the deadline for this group will be on the 22nd of October. So like I said, I'll be sending out that email tomorrow morning for folks. What you'll just need from you as a response with Fred, we'd like to move forward and set up a site visit, either virtually or in person. And we'll need a copy of your bill. And by that, I mean the front and back of the bill, because both of the sets of that information matter. If you're on the left there, your board of water and light example. If you're on the right, there's your consumer's example, which will give us that monthly usage, which is super important for us for designing the system, because the system can only be as big as you need it to be, right? We're not at the point yet where we're trying to make everybody's home their own power plant. So we have to size the system accordingly. And we also need those rate schedules that are over on the right-hand side for consumers and the right-hand side for board of water and light, so that we can identify what your return on investment will be in this, because we'll also provide a very detailed design and financial summary with that proposal. So that was a lot of information, but you guys have done an excellent job here. And it is, like I said, you're giving an hour of your time during a weeknight, which I'm sure you're very busy, and I want to be mindful of that. So this would be the time where if anybody in the audience has any questions, I will do my best to answer them there. Marshall, if you would be so kind as to monitor the chat to see if anybody is on in there, and then we can move from there. But if anybody has any questions, they can unmute themselves and ask them now of the group. I know that we got a lot of people with a lot of knowledge on the screens.
So we do have a question here from Paige. Are you running multiple of these meetings, or is the discount only available from folks on this one call?
So this is the only Solarize that we are currently running, the only one that Lansing is currently running. Now, we'll still accept people on into the group up through that deadline a week from today, Paige. So if you have friends and family, neighbors that want to partake in this, all they would have to do is you could forward that email that I send on tomorrow to them, which will include a link of this video so they can watch the presentation, and then we can add them to the group from there.
We had another question from Scott. Who are you partnering with for solar panel recycling?
That's a great question. So right now, our distributor, McNaughton McKay, is the person that we are using for all of our recycling needs. We're not at the point yet where we have had to uninstall and reinstall any of the panels yet, as most of the stuff that's coming out right now, especially in Michigan, being a little late to the party when it comes to putting these on up, are still right in the sweet spot or just in the beginning of their life cycle. But McNaughton McKay is an organization down in Metro Detroit, which is one of our distributors, and they do a wonderful job with that stuff.
Yeah, and more solar recycling businesses are coming online, and the state of Michigan is really leading the way as well. We have another question here from Chris. Can you talk about the possibilities on a flat roof?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So beyond just doing residential, we also do a lot of commercial work, which does have a lot of flat roofs, a lot of those membrane bound roofs. And so what we do is we have a floating racking system, so to speak, which is a non-penetrating system. It'll sit down on top of that flat roof. It'll be weighted down, and then our aluminum mounting brackets will go right on top of those. So it's something that we're fortunate enough that we the city of Lansing, 11 of their schools have decided that they're going to go solar here. They were able to track down some grant money and get very creative. And so we'll be installing solar panels on North Elementary here in less than a month on their flat roof. So it's exciting stuff. But the flat roof is something that we deal with all the time, and it doesn't prohibit a residential at all.
So Paige says, in 25 years, when panels need to be replaced, how will pricing work? Is there a discount for replacements as opposed to new install? So in 25 years, Paige, the panels may not need to be replaced. Their efficiency won't be as strong though. So is there a discount for replacements? Maybe Fred can speak to that, although I don't believe so.
I would love to have a crystal ball that would tell me what's going to happen in 25 years. I can tell you right now that if any of those warranties needed to be honored by us of our original installs, we absolutely come out and take care of those. And for the first 3 years, it's labor free. So the warranties to the manufacturers will go for 25 years, and then our warranties to come on out. So if something was like a tree limb was to fall and damage a panel, we would come on out with that panel free of charge for the first 3 years to take care of that.
And you guys monitor this, correct?
Yeah, we do. One of our other locals here, Pete Morgan, our one of our office managers. One of his jobs every day is to wake on up, and every system that we've ever worked with the client on, he goes through and makes sure that it is up and running every day and doing exactly what it is that we said it was going to do. We audit every year to make sure that our quotes, our proposals are accurate. Like, hey, we didn't overpromise and under deliver. So we make sure that we stay on top of those as well. The one story we did have was from the tornado 2 years ago over in Williamston. We did have a limb fall on a panel. The homeowner calls us and is like, well, there's a limb fall on the panel. We went to look and see the panel was still working. It's still working at the exact same way that it was prior to the limb falling on it. But we came around out, switched it on out, no problem. But outside of that, we've made it through all these crazy weather events, and we haven't had to manage much of it because these things, they kind of are set and forget.
Yeah, that's a really nice service you guys provide. I haven't heard from that from any other company, so I think that's unique. We have a question here from Matt. How does interconnect process work with consumers' energy?
Yeah, hi, Matt. It'll be similar to the interconnection process that Braden talked about here with the Lansing Board of Water and Light. We have a good relationship with consumers as well. So it'll be all handled through us. Pete Morgan will be our contact person on that. So from your standpoint, it'll be virtually turnkey through the process, and we'll update you along the way. Like, hey, these permits got approved, this got approved, this got approved along the way.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And then we had a couple of people ask about slides and recording. We'll be providing that. It takes a little time for the recording to download, so we'll send that out tomorrow with the slides and the recording of this event. So you can rewatch it if you miss some points or want to just check back, or if you want to send it to a neighbor, a friend, family, and they'll be eligible as well for this group buy discount. So Paige says, when do you expect panels to go up for this group if folks agree to move forward?
Yeah, great question, Paige. So talking with our office manager earlier today, if somebody was to sign a contract today, we'd be telling them that they should expect installation January. So we're a little over 3 months on out from an install standpoint here. So when you're doing the calculus on all of this, the information will come on in for next tax season, not for this tax season. So I want to be super clear. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that they're going to see that in this particular tax season.
All right. We had a private question here. Joined late, so I may must have understood, but do we have to sign up immediately to get the discounts and rebates? So no, the discounts are kind of outlined. There's the week breakdown. So you have and a couple slides back we talked about the deadline there for the group buy discount, but yep, here we are for the timeline here. So you'll have till October 22nd to make that decision. And then for the rebates, Board of Water and Light, that rebate's still available. So that's up to 4 kW to get the 2,000, which is an incredible deal. I haven't heard of any other utilities in Michigan doing this. So that's definitely makes our hometown utility here unique and thanked. And then the federal tax credit is available for, like Fred mentioned, over the course of multiple years if you don't reach that full amount. Does installing this impact any roof warranty?
Well, that's a good question, and that would be dependent upon everybody's individual warranty. So that's something that we would want to go through with you, Paige, when we're out on the site visit, because not all warranties from all companies are the same. So we would want to take a look at that language. But we do have our own roof penetration warranty for 5 years for us to come on out if anything does happen, which we, since 2016, have not had to do, despite doing upwards of 70 residential jobs a year.
A related question to that, Fred, is often people will ask, do you think I should replace my roof before I get the solar? So you might want to think about how old your roof is, and Fred, you may want to talk about what would it take to remove the panels so somebody could re-roof it and then put it back on.
Yeah, that's a great point there, Mike. So, yeah, when we come on out and we do those assessments, we will take a look at the roof and we'll talk to you about the age of the roof and the shape of the roof. And if it is a little iffy, we do recommend doing the roof first year, because I think the most important thing that we want for you is to be 100% satisfied with the process. So we don't want to promise something that isn't going to work or that's going to lead to more headaches later on. So if you have a roof that needs to be replaced first, it's not something that we would be comfortable installing on. So that's something that we would want to make sure we take care of first. We do work with a lot of the local roofers. We don't, and by that I mean timeline wise, we don't have anybody that we recommend. We are not roofers ourselves, but we do coordinate those projects pretty frequently. If you did install and say 10, 15 years from now, you want to replace the roof, what would happen is you would give us a call to come on back on out. We would remove those panels, allow the roofers to do their work, and then we would come back in and reinstall those panels. Now, that does come with a slight charge, but that charge is for labor only. Most of the materials will be reused. Depending upon the size of the system will depend how much that costs. Smaller systems, less than $1,000, bigger system, more than $2,000 for that to come on out and happen down the road. So if that's something that is in the wheelhouse, it's definitely should be brought into the budget.
Does Michigan Saves loan cover a roof that needs to be replaced with the solar setup?
That that's a great question for Pat, who's not here with us. I'm going to make the assumption that no, as that is not part of an energy efficiency, which is what that tax credit is about. But that's something that we should probably check in with Michigan Saves on to be sure.
Yeah, sorry about that, Drew. I don't have that question offhand, but we'll definitely follow up with you after the meeting here. And then what about the tax credit? I've heard some people say that the tax credit will apply to a new roof as long as you're getting solar with it. Do you have any insight on that, Fred?
The standard line is we are not tax professionals on that one. And as a general rule, and I personally am not one. So that would be something for your TurboTax to figure on out, or that person working for you at H&R Block.
Yeah, my TurboTax said no, by the way, just so you know.
That would be the direction that I would lean as well, but to each their own.
What if my house has knob and tube wiring? Is there any restriction against that?
Yeah, so part of our site visits and site assessments will be lots of pictures and videos for our electricians to take a peek at. And one of the wonderful things about Absolute Solar is, again, we are our own company. We don't farm out any of our work. Our electricians are 401k employees, so they work with us exclusively. And so they would take a look at that information, and then we would be able to tell you, like, yep, this is up to code and this is going to be great, or it's not, and here's the cost to replace it.
Great. I think that kind of answered the next one here about any systems or older wiring can be obstacles. So that does bring us
It would
to
be something that either myself or Adam Phelps or other sales representative would be able to give you an idea of during that site visit before we passed it on to our trained professionals. So again, we don't enjoy pulling the rug out on anybody. There's no bait and switch with us. We want you to be happy, because if you are happy and satisfied, then you're going to talk to your friends and neighbors about it. And that's our win.
Absolutely. Well, that does bring us to 8 p.m. So I just want to send a special thanks to Fred, Braden, Lori, and Pat, and everyone who attended. We really appreciate that. And again, make sure send this out, the video, the email, the slides to any friends, family, neighbors. The more people that get involved, the greater chance that we have at getting that 15% group discount and really, bring that price down on your bill. So thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.